Welcome to the Real Bible Rob podcast. I'm so delighted to have Maddie May Modal here. I've been hoping for this for a while, so I'm so glad that you could join us all the way from Scotland. And
Yeah,
so I'll just say a few words of introduction, then we'll get right into it. Um,
great.
so she's made, of course, a big splash. Many of you have probably seen her on social media for about the last year or so, and she has tons of knowledge especially about the New Testament, and I'd say, a little bit of sass in her videos, and
Oh,
I just
yes.
love. And
Definitely.
I think just getting that conversation going about biblical scholarship and what it really is, and
Hmm.
how not to be overwhelmed by the bad aspects of it. So, and just
Hmm.
bringing rationality to Christianity, especially for
Hmm.
younger people, I think is super important. Um,
Hmm.
she has a PhD. She is a PhD candidate in biblical studies. Is that correct? Or in
Yes, that is correct.
focused on gender and sexuality, and she is at the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. And
Hmm.
so we'll talk about your research a little bit, talk about some trends in the
Yeah.
church, and talk about consent and sexuality. And I'm just so glad you're here. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about our conversation.
Yeah, wonderful. And we talked a little bit about just what it means to be on media, and what you're trying,
Hmm.
what we're trying to do. We're kind of in the same mission, just trying to
Yeah.
bring some rationality and intelligence
Hmm.
to people's Christianity. So I just
Yeah.
want to get started. Just if you could just tell us a little bit, about, for those of you who don't know you, about where
Yeah.
you've come from, what your research is, what are you doing?
Sure. Yeah. So I am originally from South Arkansas, and I grew up in the Southern Baptist denomination, pretty really fundamentalist, high control context. And my dad is actually a Bible scholar
Hmm.
and a pastor. So I'm the oldest daughter of a pastor, which is just a unique. Um, a unique situation to find yourself in. But I always and something that the Southern Baptist Church is really good at is teaching you how to read your Bible and to
Hmm.
take it
Yeah.
seriously. And so I started to do my homework. I did all of my Sunday school homework. I memorized all of the verses. I,
Uh-huh.
did all the Awanas, the Bible drill, all of that.
Yeah.
Um, and I just started to ask hard questions of the text,
Hmm.
and fell in love with it. And so I went in, did my undergrad. I did a minor in biblical studies, a
Okay.
major in English literature.
Hmm.
So, sort of a combination of two of my favorite things. And then went to seminary right after that at Denver Seminary.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Hmm.
slightly more liberal than my Southern Baptist undergrad,
Uh-huh.
but still pretty conservative
Yeah.
evangelical. Um, but they were affirming of women in ministry. So that was a big
Mm,
step
yeah.
in the right direction for me. And then went straight from seminary to get my PhD here.
Uh-huh.
I am working specifically in the letter of Romans, Paul's letter to the
Oh,
Romans.
wonderful.
Yeah, it is wonderful. It's really
Yeah.
hard too.
Yeah, I know. Well, I
um,
love Beverly Gaventa so much, and
oh
her,
my gosh.
yeah, so keep
Yes,
going.
yeah, Beverly Gaventa and Susan Eastman are like my
Uh-huh.
two favorite scholars in the world, and I draw on their work a ton. I'm looking specifically at masculinity in Romans.
Oh,
So,
uh-huh.
what does Paul think it means to be a man?
Hmm.
Um, and looking at that in the context of the broader Greco-Roman culture
Yeah.
and Second Temple Jewish culture. So it's a biblical studies degree, so it's very exegetically driven.
Yeah.
I'm really in the Greek,
Uh-huh.
really in in primary sources, looking at um, just really what I consider just really fun stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm working on. That's sort of my day to day. job.
That is so cool. I think that so you see uh, Paul in context there in a way that
Yeah.
most Christians today don't see Paul, and maybe you
Yeah.
can kind of contrast a little bit about our ideas of Paul. And I know you've talked about it before, but I'd love to hear about it a little bit again.
Sure. Yeah. So most of the time when I tell people that I'm working in Paul, especially if they are a person of color, a queer person, or a woman,
Hmm.
their immediate reaction is ew.
Yes,
um,
for some good
and
reasons. Yes,
yes, exactly. Definitely. I never get frustrated with that. I never,
sure.
um, I think that there is very good reason for that. And it is the Pauline world, which is sort of the world that I've stepped into. Very few women and
Uh-huh.
people of color and queer people are in this field of study because
Hmm.
of how difficult it is. Um, but my sort of favorite thing is to redeem Paul for people.
Yeah,
I think that
wonderful.
he's been robbed of us
Yeah,
from some people who love to just misread and misinterpret him.
yeah.
Um, I like to describe him as the father of deconstruction
Hmm.
because he took a faith that he loved and really cared for, his Jewish faith,
Uh-huh.
and he reinterpreted it to be more inclusive of
Yeah.
the Gentile community.
Hmm.
So he adopted this faith and he loved it too much to let it be exclusive anymore. And so he is really the father of inclusion in my
Yeah. Uh-huh.
experience, which is not the experience of every person when they read Paul or think about Paul. But yeah, you're so right. Like the context is really important when we're
Yes.
reading any text in the Bible. And I would say maybe even especially Paul, since he's writing letters.
Yeah.
And so we only have, it's like reading one side of a text message.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
we're trying to interpret, okay, what is this person trying to say? Who is on the other line here? What is the motive? What is, the context before and after this message? And so
Yes.
those are the sorts of things that you have to rely on to understand Paul as a writer, Paul as an
Yeah.
apostle, Paul as a philosopher. And uh, those are a lot of pieces that are really easy to miss. And when you do miss them, it's really easy to sort of adopt him to your personal agenda,
Yeah.
whether that's an agenda of oppression or an agenda of liberation.
Yeah. Especially the pastoral letters, right? And
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
guess
So
yeah.
I will say, I actually don't think that he wrote the pastoral
Oh,
epistles.
okay. Yeah. There's some
Some
debate about that.
people,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes, there is debate and good debate. But I stick to the more like undisputed
Yeah.
epistles is what we call them. And I think that those pastoral epistles, First and Second Timothy, for example, came later.
Yeah.
And part of my reasoning behind that is I do think that it's a reaction to the
Yes.
sort of inclusion that Paul wrote in his undisputed epistles like First and Second Corinthians, Romans,
Yeah.
Galatians, those ones in the front. So yeah.
Well, clearly Paul was listening to women a lot more than people characterize. Clearly was cooperating with women with them and
Mm-hmm.
had them in authority. So yeah, yeah, I've seen that where the pastoral letters are sometimes viewed as a reaction to that inclusiveness.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
or they could be personal letters with talking about specific problems if they are Pauline. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I really, that's the impression I get too, is that Paul, especially even in Acts, you see how Paul is cooperating with women and
Exactly.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost harder to read Paul in a way that's not approving of women in ministry
Yeah.
than the other way around, because
Yeah.
you have a lot of names, and a
Yes.
lot of a lot of actual women to deal with if that's the case.
Yeah.
Um,
You
and
have
so a
to
lot of people
ignore.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. A lot of people think it's easier to read Paul in a way that's misogynistic.
Yeah.
But we actually have a lot more evidence to the contrary than we do
Yeah.
the
Yep.
other side. And so, for example, Phoebe, who Paul
Yeah.
calls a deacon, is the letter carrier
Yeah.
of his most important epistle, Romans. And as a part of her role as a letter carrier, she wouldn't have it's not just sort of like a
Right.
mailman sort of job. She would have interpreted the letter for Paul and the community, and she would have fielded questions about it. So
Right.
she
Right.
would have taught this letter to the community, and so she was, for all intents and purposes, the first Pauline scholar
Yeah.
was a
Yes.
woman. And he trusted her to do that. And so just little examples like that are all throughout his
Yeah.
letters, and it's really important to
Yeah. In
notice
fact, I
that.
was talking to a professor that I had. His name is
Mm-hmm.
Eko Tupamahu, and
Mm.
he said that Phoebe likely spoke Latin because uh,
Oh yeah.
because if she was an upper class
Mm-hmm.
widow in Concrea, she would have interacted with the aristocracy or the courts or
Yeah.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, uh, and if you're going to talk to people in Rome, you had to at least know some Latin, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I just
That's
thought
really
that was so
interesting.
cool. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I've never
And
heard that before, but it
yeah,
makes
I
total
hadn't
sense.
either. I had a
Mm-hmm.
parishioner come to me and said she spoke Latin, didn't she? And I said, I don't. Well, that's very interesting. And then I talked to my
Yeah.
professor, my ex-professor about that, and he goes, "Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm pretty sure she must have spoken Latin."
Oh, that's
I,
great.
I thought that
Yeah.
was so cool. But
That
just the
is really cool.
trust, because
Yes.
she, uh, first of all, a woman traveling, probably not alone, but probably as a rich
Mm-hmm.
widow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Probably, um, uh, Paul didn't go to Rome until much later, probably.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, I mean, the trust of his,
Yeah.
what we consider his most important epistle. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah, definitely.
We can nerd out on Rome. I
Oh
love
man.
Romans. I love to.
I mean, let's do it. I love it too.
Well, I think we talked a little about before, and you've spoken a little bit about it, but I think talking about consent,
Yeah.
especially sexual consent, is
Mm-hmm.
so central. And it's the main argument against this idea of using the Bible especially the clobber verses, as a rule
Yes.
book, right? To
Mm-hmm.
say you can't be LGBTQ or define what marriage is and stuff. So I was wondering if you can just kind of give your view of
Sure.
what consent meant, what it means today in modern
Yep.
relationships, and what it meant then.
Yeah, sure. So consent today is this idea that two willing adults enter into some sort of relationship, and they are both happy and
Hmm.
excited to do that. There's no sort of, you know, there's no sort of like 50-50 on one side and then 100-100 on the other.
Yeah.
Both sides have to be completely willing, completely able to give consent. There's a great video that I used to watch for like different trainings about consent, using the example of a teacup.
Hmm.
So if someone comes over to your house for tea, and they say, no, thank you, I don't want tea, you don't shove tea down their throat.
Right.
Right. Or if someone is asleep, you don't shove tea down their throat. Or if
Yeah.
someone says, actually, I know you just steeped the tea for me, but now I'm feeling like I don't want any anymore. Sorry for the confusion. You don't shove tea down their throat. So just this idea that both people are willing and excited to have tea together,
Mm-hmm.
is the idea of consent. Um, Consent also draws on the idea that both person has a voice,
Mm-hmm.
has rights, has a right to consent, and therefore has personhood, full personhood.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's the glitch, the inconsistency that I find in biblical literature, and
Yeah.
or the context of biblical literature and now. So it's really important to understand, particularly about women, slaves, children, disabled people, anyone who doesn't fit the patriarchal heteronormative standard of the time.
Yes.
Of the
Yeah.
time. So these would be freedmen, would be
Mm-hmm.
the people who fit that category. Freedmen are people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, no one else is. So that's what's really important to understand.
Yeah.
So a part of my research is looking at masculinity, and what's important to understand about masculinity in the ancient world is that there isn't man and woman.
Mm-hmm.
There is man and unmen.
Yes. Yeah.
Everyone is measured on the same spectrum, and at the top of the spectrum is the man.
Mm-hmm.
And so you see this in like ancient medical texts where
Mm-hmm.
women are described as almost like half baked.
Yes.
They're
Right.
almost there, but they didn't have enough time in the sun, so they're still kind of wet and sloppy.
They're not fully
And
formed, right? They don't have self-control,
yes,
all of that. Yeah.
exactly. That's totally it. And slaves would fit into that as well, and so would children, and different people of different disabilities. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what's required for consent is that you think that the other person has a right to consent, and that you think that they're a person to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's just not a category that existed in the ancient world. So
Yeah.
even exemplary women, I argue, in scripture, are held up to a masculine standard. They are
Yes.
exemplary
Right.
because they are more like men than they are like women.
Yeah.
And I would say the same goes for Paul. These women that we see, he's measuring them according to this masculine standard, which I would say here, I don't think we've come as far from that as we think we have.
Yeah.
But that's an aside.
Oh,
Um,
oh yeah, certainly
yeah,
anything before, say, 50 years ago was essentially
yeah,
society was exactly that way. There was
exactly.
well, even in America, white men were the only ones that really voted for,
Exactly. That's it. That's
yeah,
it. Because,
property owners. Yeah.
exactly, the other people didn't need to because they're
Yeah.
not real people. And so the
Yeah.
same sort of goes for consent, where it's like, what do you mean? Like, it's not, you can't make a decision because you're not a real person. You're not a like full person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so what we need to understand about not only queer or homosexual relationships in scripture, um, the consent is not an issue there at all.
Yeah.
But it's not an issue. Consent's not an issue in straight relationships in the Bible either.
Yeah. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and
It isn't.
so when we talk about our modern ideas of marriage, our modern ideas of relationships,
Hmm.
uh, we have this idea like, okay, both people wanted to be involved, both people had the same access to rights and their voice and decisions. But that's just not something we can impose on the text because it's not there.
Yeah.
Um, and so any sort of like biblical marriage, like let's go back to biblical marriage. Like, no, let's not go back.
Which biblical marriage? Which
Exactly. Yeah,
century?
like yeah, exactly. Which, do you want to talk about polygamy? Do you want to talk about, like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
on and on what kind of biblical marriage? But then even in the different types, we don't want to go back to that, certainly because it's a patriarchal text, written to men, by men, for men,
Yeah.
um, and by a certain type of man.
Yeah.
Um, so that's sort of what I'm talking about with consent, where it's just really this modern idea that we have and that we should have. I think it is important, I will say.
Yes.
And I want us to have that,
Yeah. Right.
but I'm
Right.
not sure that exists in
Yeah.
the Bible like we assume it does. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I kind of wonder if that isn't helpful in defining some of the differences that we have in our society. Is
Mm,
there are most of us, we at least believe that most of us believe in full consent, right? And
yes. Hmm.
many, especially Christians, don't really. They want
Yeah.
to. So I want to ask you a really nerdy question then.
Sure.
If we believe that Paul, and this kind of depends on whether Ephesians is Pauline or not, but
Hmm.
the idea of hupotasso, uh,
Hmm.
submission or
Hmm.
fealty, loyalty, whatever,
Hmm.
being sort of the soldier giving over their
Yeah.
consent to the master, which is the
Hmm.
way the relationship with women is described versus
Hmm.
hupakuo, which is absolute no consent. No, you are
Mm.
is that a distinction that we can kind of hang on to? Maybe that there's a little bit of a more voluntary aspect in the relationship between husbands and wives
Hmm.
in scripture or not? Or is it pretty much just like Roman society where you have women without
I haven't thought about this question, so this is sort
hmm
of my gut reaction. I've been studying a lot about hupakoi,
hmm
uh, um, obedience,
Yeah.
um, allegiance, um, and I think that's an interesting point. I would have to think about it some more, but my initial reaction is I don't think that there's that much of a distinction,
Okay.
only because I think that every person, regardless of gender, is called to both obedience and submission.
Okay.
Um, and so, in the context of Ephesians, right, where wives are called to submit to their husbands, just earlier, it says that everyone is supposed to submit to each other in the name of
Yes.
Christ.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that verb is not repeated in the
Right.
Greek. So it instead, in the verse where it says wives submit to your husbands, it
hmm
says wives do the same to your husbands. It
Ah.
refers back to the
Uh-huh.
previous verse where everyone is supposed to submit.
Uh-huh.
So I don't think that the problem, this is my hot take. I
Yeah,
don't
sure.
think that the problem is the idea of submission. I think that
Uh-huh.
submission is really important for Paul and the idea of what it means to be a believer.
Uh-huh.
Um, but the problem is when we just apply to submission to one gender or to
Uh-huh.
one class of
Yes.
people. The thing that we need to focus on is that submission is called, we are all equally called to submission to each other, and
Yeah.
we are all
Okay.
equally called to obedience to God together. And um and I think that's also the difference, where it's submission to another person, whereas
Yeah.
obedience is often in relationship to God, where God has complete control.
Uh-huh.
But then in relationship with other people, you have more of a you have more of a choice
Yeah.
um, in that sort of direction. So I think that I just don't think Paul's just not thinking about consent. He thinks about
Right. Yeah.
these
Because it wasn't
these
part of his
cosmic.
deal. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't. I mean, he thinks about. I mean, even I've been researching, to get really nerdy. I've been researching divine and human agency.
Uh-huh.
So do humans even have a
Yeah.
choice? In this is actually a really big question,
Yeah.
especially when studying Paul, because Paul has these cosmic powers that are
Right.
controlling everything, right? So he has
Yeah.
capital S sin, who rules the world, enters into
Yeah.
the world, um, holds the world in dominion, is the slave master. And then you've got capital D, death, and then you've got God
Right.
as like the other side of this. And even what's really interesting, again, it's just I love that I get to nerd out about this. um, Jesus doesn't do that much when you read it in
Right.
that context,
Right.
because every time it's not Jesus resurrects himself,
Uh-huh.
it's not Jesus sacrifices himself, it's God presents Jesus as a sacrifice,
Uh-huh.
or God resurrects Jesus.
Uh-huh.
So even in that sense, even thinking about Christ, Christ is the ultimate example of submission and obedience,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
he lets God do with him what he will.
Yes.
Um, and that's the model that Paul puts forward. So even like Paul's not even concerned with whether Jesus had consent in the whole thing.
Yeah, that's very
Um,
interesting, isn't it? Because it's
yeah,
sort of like, yeah, maybe a modern way of looking at Jesus is we say that Jesus consented to
right.
be uh be arrested and
Mm-hmm.
sacrificed. But what you're saying is, well, no, it's kind of like baked into the cake. It,
Yeah.
yeah, it's obedience. Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
interesting.
I mean, it's God initiating the whole thing to begin with, and
Yeah.
Jesus is sort of responding as a good obedient person. And yeah, it is really interesting. I mean, I will say to this, people will say, well, like, well, Jesus accepted the cup,
Yeah.
in John. But we're talking Paul here.
Yeah.
So an important thing with biblical studies, at least in my opinion, is to read each body of work independent
Right. As it, yeah.
of other
Hmm.
uh, that's not the way of a systematic theologian. And it's not the way of actually just most theologians.
Yeah.
But as a Bible scholar, it's my role
Yeah.
to say, well, what is Paul saying about this specific
That's
thing?
right.
Um, and that's what I'm noticing with Paul.
Well, systematic theologians take all the fun out of the Bible, so, you know.
You said it, not me.
Well, they try to remove ambiguity, but there's
Yeah.
so much there. So,
Yes.
that is fascinating because um, we have very different views about our free will, what free will is.
Yeah.
And even there's a lot of debate among us.
Mm-hmm.
There are atheist scientists who think we have no free will. There are
Yeah. Right.
Calvinist Christians who think we have no free
Mm-hmm.
will, and well, the
Yep.
rest of us are somewhere in the messy middle, right? And
Yeah.
so uh, I- that so maybe the free will that Jesus had was to obey or not obey, right? Or to
That's
submit or not
that's what
submit.
I think. This is so if you want a nerdy book recommendation, it's a really nerdy one.
Uh-huh.
um The Emergence of Sin by Matthew
Okay.
Croasmun
Okay.
um is on sin in Romans, and sort of
Oh, really?
how
Okay.
can how can sin control a person, and how can a person be sinful at the same time.
Okay.
And he uses a very interesting, it's a very complicated book.
Uh-huh.
But he uses an interesting illustration in it that, a person individually can be racist.
Yeah.
Their racism, though, is a symptom of a larger
Uh-huh.
systemic problem that is very real and very indicative of the time and the space that they live in.
Yes, right.
That does not take, however, that does not take the individual responsibility away from that
Right.
person.
Hmm.
They still committed an act of racism, and that is still egregious. So, I mean, for example, like I can look at, my grandparents, great grandparents who lived
Hmm.
in southern Arkansas, who had, um, Black people were their, like maids, and, I sort of
Sure.
grew up
Yeah.
around this. Um, and that they were a product of their time, and their culture and their space.
Hmm.
However, that does not take away their responsibility
No.
and their culpability in committing
Yeah.
and perpetuating acts of
Yep.
racism. So I think we can think about it in that way of, um, we as people, we do have individual responsibility to align with the correct systems and powers.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and that's, that's through education. That's through a lot of internal work.
Hmm.
Um, but that's sort of how I think about it, where it's this act of, I think a better word for obedience would be like alignment.
Uh-huh.
And a better word for faith would be like allegiance.
Yeah.
So who are you, um who has your allegiance and who has your alignment,
Uh-huh.
is sort of how I like to think about it.
I'll put that in the notes. Emergence of sin. So,
Yeah, you should. Yeah.
yeah, I will. That is fascinating, because each of us is responsible for the daily decisions that we make.
Yeah,
It's usually
that's right.
the very small, it's the very small things that we do every day that really matter in that
Yep.
respect. Are we going
Hmm.
to, stick to our uh to principles, or are we going to cave or
Hmm.
whatever? It's something
Yeah.
we all believe in as Christians.
Yeah,
It's just
absolutely.
how do you see that, and
Hmm.
what do you consider sin or not, right? So
Yeah, yeah, that's a big one too.
yeah,
Hmm.
we certainly go down that one too. Um,
Yes.
so, uh, why are biblical studies so important? You've
Mm.
devoted your life to this. I think they're really important, but what's your view on that? And is a serious study of Scripture the antidote for so, for some of the Christian opposition to LGBTQ people, women in leadership,
Hmm. Hmm.
acceptance? What do you think about those things?
I'll answer the second one first. Um, I think it is one antidote.
Okay.
Um, I think that there are several antidotes, and I don't think I don't think that biblical studies is for everyone.
Uh-huh.
And so I think that it is one antidote. As far as why biblical studies is important, I've sort of just a personal story. I shared with you that I was an
Hmm.
English major in
Yeah.
undergrad, with a minor in biblical studies. And so at the end, I realized throughout my English major that I was really focusing on religious themes,
Hmm.
throughout the texts that I was studying. So I would read Shakespeare and I would find theology. I would
Yes, of
read
course. Yeah,
Chaucer
very
and I would
much.
focus on, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like there's so much there. And so um, I got to the end of my undergrad experience and I sat down with a very like trusted advisor and professor who's one of my English professors. And I told him, like, I'm just really struggling between whether to apply to seminary,
Uh-huh.
or to an English master's.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, I don't normally do this. I don't normally like give my opinion, like usually as a professor,
Yeah.
try to guide your student to make their own decision. But he was like, Maddie, I feel very strongly that the English world has voices like yours,
Uh-huh.
but the church doesn't.
Yes, that is true. Yeah.
And I left and I was like, okay, I'm going to seminary. Um
Yeah. Cool.
and so I think why biblical studies is really important is because biblical literacy is really important.
Yeah.
Knowing how to read the Bible and how to interpret it and use it wisely
Mm-hmm.
is really important, because the Bible and its interpretation
Mm-hmm.
is behind legislation that we're
It
seeing
is.
today.
Yeah.
It's
So much more than
behind,
people realize. Yeah.
yes, so much more. I mean, um, like Jesus and John Wayne is a classic for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Kristen Gomez Dume shows just how ingrained
Yeah.
biblical interpretation is with these massive political movements. And in my
Yeah.
opinion, misreadings of the Bible
Yeah.
have led to the state the falling of the American empire, which we are
Yeah.
seeing right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so I think it's important to know that and be able to see that.
Yeah.
And, literacy skills are the first thing that fascists target.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you can read George Orwell, 1984, that Animal
Yeah.
Farm, whatever, like these are the signs of fascists wanting to take away your
Uh-huh.
ability to critically think for yourself
Hmm.
and to understand for yourself. And I think that the Bible is a very palpable example of that.
Yeah.
Um, that you are supposed to, especially in high control evangelical um, spaces,
Uh-huh.
um, you are supposed to learn what you're going to learn and don't ask questions.
Right.
And that is just not how you need to read the Bible. It's not how you read any text. Um, and so that's why I think it's really important. And I think that
Yeah.
it is one antidote to um, the absolute vitriol that we're seeing against the
Yeah.
LGBTQ community, against people of color,
Hmm.
against immigrants, on and on and on. Um,
Yeah.
you'll see Bible verses on protest signs on both sides.
You're
The
right.
Bible is,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
um, you should know how to read it.
Yeah.
This text that you're putting in your Instagram bio, like you should know how to read it. Um, but often we aren't taught how to read it. We're taught how to uh, open it up and point our finger.
Yeah.
Um, and that's a very dangerous way to approach a very ancient and a very important text.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, especially and there's a kind of a spectrum of people. You have the people who just do their verse bombing, right?
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of people are taught that way. But then you have the
Mm-hmm.
people that I think are a little more dangerous, and these are the people who, have their Strong's Concordance and, have
Mm.
their expository preaching, their John MacArthur Bible and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those people are, I think, dangerous because then people look to them and say, oh, well, they're very, very knowledgeable,
Yeah.
and without understanding the difference between real scholarship and that, right? So,
Yes.
um,
Absolutely.
I think that that's something that your videos are very out there and just say,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of make fun of that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, that may turn some people off. I'm sure it does. But it
Yeah.
also just says, I'm not going to take this. I'm not going to take your
Yeah.
nonsense,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what's in your mind when you're doing that? Or
Yeah. So my content is not for everyone, very deliberately.
yeah.
When I started making content, I had a very specific audience in mind.
Hmm.
And that is people who are queer or
Hmm.
queer allies who really care about what the Bible has to say, despite
Yeah.
everything. Um, and I I've grown up around people who play both sides,
Uh-huh.
who and I've been this person who holds the hand of the person with the strong concordance and
Yeah.
says, let me guide you through,
Yeah.
and it's very
It-
pastoral and it's important work. Like I
yeah.
have so many women and friends who are in those fields, who are in those spaces
Yeah.
that I will never go into ever again. And I will never be welcome there
Uh-huh.
ever again. Um, but I decided a long time ago that I wanted to be very squarely and with the group of people who were never even allowed in church to begin with.
Yeah.
Um, and so my content is strategic in that way. I'm turning away the right people, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The people
Yeah.
who
Good
are,
point.
yeah, like the people who are turned
Choose
off
your
by
audience.
my
Yeah.
exactly. I don't want them. And there are people who be like, I followed you and now I unfollow you because of this, and I'm like,
Hmm.
good. Like if I was, it
Yeah.
was going to be
Right.
it was going to be eventual. But I want to strongly and loudly side with the marginalized and oppressed.
Yeah.
And forgive me, I think part of it is weariness. I know these men, I know these women. Um, they have access to books.
Yeah.
They know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
They are making an intentional decision,
Yeah.
especially the ones that you are talking about who went to seminary, who,
Yes.
have the
Right. Yeah.
study Bibles.
Have some knowledge. Yeah. Yeah.
They know what they're doing,
Uh-huh.
and they are making an intentional decision.
Yeah.
And I am making an intentional decision in the other direction.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm a little bit tired of trying to change minds while there are people dying on the other side.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it's sass, it's theatrical. I have I think part of it is hard, I think, because I am a lot more nuanced in general
Yes.
than I come across online, but it is
Yeah.
part of it is getting your voice out there. You have to be
You have to get the
loud
attention.
and
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
entertaining and get the
Yeah.
attention and
Mm-hmm.
make the right people angry, make the other people like
Uh-huh.
cheer you on. And so part of that is, I was a theater kid. Like I can play a
Yeah.
role. Um
Yeah.
and a lot of it is a role. So that's why I've really like enjoyed shifting to Substack the past couple of months. Mainly because I get to be more nuanced there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I get writing will always be my main medium.
Uh-huh.
I enjoy that more than anything. Even all of the reels that you see, everything that or TikToks that you
Uh-huh.
see, I write out and memorize. And so
Uh-huh.
it's mainly
Very
writing.
intentional. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, it's hard because you don't want to just make people angry, but then part of that is like
Good.
sometimes you just got to make people angry to feel
Right.
something.
Well, I think that what I hope for with those very public TikToks and stuff like that is that you
Hmm.
kind of put a wall of protection around queer people
Yes.
that need it and realize that,
Yeah.
oh, I can be queer and not listen to those folks and really, especially
Yes.
young people, especially teenagers and
Yes.
young
That is
folks.
absolutely my goal. And it makes me
Yeah.
feel very seen that you say that because I'm a queer person myself,
Uh-huh.
actually. I'm bisexual,
Mm-hmm.
but I am in a straight passing relationship. So I'm married to a man.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I have very personal
Yeah.
stakes, but I also have an immense amount of privilege
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
in the fact that I'm in a straight passing relationship. And so part of me wants uh, is intentionally using that privilege to
Uh-huh.
say the
Yeah.
things that other queer people can't say or don't have the opportunity to say. And so I feel like a lot of times my content is just being a big sister standing up
Yeah. Yeah.
for
Yeah.
my queer siblings.
That's that's what I see when I see what you put
Yeah,
out.
that's
Yeah.
really cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I feel very similar to I got this a lot because I went to seminary later in life and
Hmm.
being, a white, straight person with some wealth who's,
Hmm.
all of that, all of those things that go with that. I get instantly cast, especially
Yeah.
I went to George Fox which is a Quaker seminary,
Okay. Hmm.
and which was a wonderful experience. Very not a lot of Presbyterians there, and but
Yeah.
I got, but I immediately I would go, oh, he's going to be that Theo Bro,
Yeah.
clueless Theo Bro
Hmm.
dude, and it would take a while to break that down. But I've seen that
Hmm.
both sides. Is that yeah, part of it feels bad because you're putting a label on
Yeah.
me. But the other
Hmm.
part of it is I do get to talk in some spaces
Yeah.
that other people can't, especially in pastoral spaces
Hmm.
and older folks, but also young, restless, reformed young Theo bros.
Yeah.
Um, they can be vicious toward me because they go, "You're breaking the code, you're not being
Yeah.
like." we
Yeah.
want you to be. But I do get some very significant conversations with them.
Hmm.
So I go,
Yeah, I mean, there are some people who will scroll and see your video and linger two
yeah,
more seconds than scroll and see my video immediately. Doesn't matter what I say,
hmm,
just my embodied experience. And I would get the same thing. People will stay and watch my video 2 seconds longer than my black sister doing the
uh-huh,
same thing.
yep,
And so we're all just trying to use our privilege in a
use what we
way
have.
that
Yeah,
uplifts and encourages the marginalized. And yes, sometimes that means shutting up and listening. And white people can always, especially American white people, can always
yeah,
benefit from that skill. It's a spiritual discipline, in my opinion.
mm-hmm,
And to be an ally and to know when to be quiet and to listen and to
uh-huh,
uplift. But then there are other times where being that big sibling, or um, that person who stands up for the little guy is
yeah,
also really important too. Um, I saw a great video of an older lady at a No Kings protest,
uh-huh,
and an interviewer came up to her and was like, a white interviewer and a white
mm-hmm,
lady. Um, an interviewer was like, it's really interesting there. It's mostly white people here.
uh-huh, yeah,
And
yeah, right.
the did you see this?
I think I did. Yeah,
Yeah. And so the lady responds and says, it's our problem. We need to fix it. This is this would be way more dangerous for
yeah, it's not a
our
safe place for,
brothers and
yeah,
sisters
yeah,
of color. And so that's why we're here. They
yeah,
would get arrested before us. They would get,
yes,
violence before us. And so that's why we're here. This is not a place for them. They don't need to be
yeah,
here. And I feel like a lot of the spaces that I inhabit on in online in content
uh-huh,
is they don't need to be here. um and I'm here instead. You can talk to me.
yeah,
Especially with my education, where I
uh-huh,
can be like,
yeah.
I'm a Bible scholar, say it to my face. Like,
Right, right.
like, my trans little sister doesn't need to hear it.
Right.
Tell me.
Yeah,
And so
yeah. If you're going to argue with
that's a lot of
somebody,
it.
I'm equipped, right?
Exactly.
To argue with you if you
Don't
want it.
pick on him.
Right.
Come here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and that's super important. I didn't know how to feel about that little video clip that you're talking about
Mm.
when I first
Mhm.
heard it, but then I go, yes, she's right because
Mhm.
and she reminds me so much of sort of the mainline church
Mhm.
church lady that you see a lot of. And I
Yeah.
go, oh, thank God, and uh, I go, thank God for these people because
Yeah.
they are trying really hard and they don't always get it. They're sometimes clueless too. People who
Yeah.
are in my congregation, there's always a little, but they realize something's got to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, that's a
Mhm.
big thing when you've got
It is.
60, 70, 80-year-old people realizing
Yes.
that things need to change, you know.
So amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Um, and my target, well, my target is not really them. My target's more uh, people that are a little bit younger.
Mhm.
Sometimes the Theo bro type
Yeah.
person who's so I'd love it. So I'll engage. This I wanted to ask you next is when it's like a 20-year-old Theo Bro, very Calvinist and that coming
Yeah.
after me, I'll engage with them and I'll gauge tough,
Mhm.
because that's what works with them, right?
Yeah.
And, I would say a quarter of the time, not all the time, but some of the time, we go, oh, I get it. I get what you
Mhm.
mean,
Hmm.
and we'll reach some little bit of kumbaya, right? A lot of times we not,
That's great.
but I always hope that at least leaving a little bit of an impression that no,
Mhm.
as you engage with your spiritual life, you will see more, right? You'll see
Yeah.
other points of view.
Mhm.
Um, so I guess uh, I wanted to ask you about how you engage.
Mm.
Sometimes I'm very tender to people.
Mhm.
Sometimes I push back. Do you
Yeah.
do that? how do you engage with commenters and people who engage with you?
Yeah. So depends on the tone of the engagement. Um, you know, initially, a lot of times I don't read the comments, honestly.
Hmm.
My platforms have gotten so big that it's just sort of like I'll post and leave. If I just sat there and read comments all day,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be the mom that I am. I wouldn't be the PhD student that I am, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like sometimes you just have to not be on your phone.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's part of it. And then um there are different like levels of engagement in my opinion. Like there are people who are just almost like sort of bots, like awful,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
hate situation.
Yeah.
Don't engage with that.
No.
I don't see any meaning. There are people who a lot of times, and maybe you get this too, I get chat GPT like comments that are
Uh-huh.
like paragraphs long,
Oh,
um
yeah. Yeah.
with
The
the
copy and
Greek words
paste.
and exactly
Hmm.
that they copy and paste straight out
Yeah.
of ChatGPT, and they're like, "Wow, she never responds to that." And I'm like, "Well, you could ask ChatGPT what my response would be." Um,
I have
and
said that
then
back to
that's
them too.
yeah, yeah, just like, okay, now ask ChatGPT to tell you what an opposing view would be.
Yeah.
Um, so that's part of it. Um, I will say the goal of my content is I don't think that many minds are changed online.
No.
Um, I think that minds are changed in personal relationship.
Yeah.
And so I have people in my life that I care about and love
Hmm.
that I engage with. That I have
Right.
these hard conversations with. That's where I spend a lot of my energy because they love me and I
Yeah.
love them and I find it worthwhile to have conversations with them. Strangers online, I find most of the time their mind is not going to be changed.
No.
Um, and so sometimes I will point them to like, have you talked to a pastor about this? Have you
Uh-huh.
Googled a book about this? Have you,
Yeah.
those sorts of things where um, a lot of it's willful ignorance too. Like if they wanted to be educated, they could be. We have every resource at our fingertips, and
Yeah.
I'm very open to pointing them to the right resources. Um, but my goal is to equip mostly queer trans people with the skills that they need to talk to their mom and dad,
Uh-huh.
um, and the
Yeah.
skills that they need to talk to their best friend after they come
Uh-huh.
out. Or, that's what I want, is real life conversations to come from my
Yeah.
content. And so I don't actually spend a ton of time engaging with people who disagree with me online,
Uh-huh.
because my hope is that they go talk to somebody that they know.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
difference between, in my opinion, like, and there are people who are like, who prove are the exception to prove the rule. But if you meet a trans person, it's
Uh-huh.
going to change everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you
It's
talk
true.
to a trans person,
Yeah.
that changes everything.
Yeah. Now, I will ask
And
that sometimes. I go, do you know and love a trans
yeah,
person? If
yep,
you do, you wouldn't say this.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's it. And so I sort of pray that when they do have a friend or a family member
Uh-huh.
come out to them, then they're ready to have those hard conversations. But it's not going to be me, a stranger on the internet,
No.
that changes their
Well, I do
mind.
think that there is a pastoral aspect to it where
Hmm.
um if because other people read your comments, right? So you'll
Yeah.
comment, and I always think that way. I go, I'm not responding to this person. I'm
Mm,
responding to the
mm.
person who's going to
Yeah, that's
read the
good.
comment. Yeah, and there is a path. So that's very interesting in that you view this pastorally, basically. You view
Oh
this
yeah.
as a way, and uh, and that kind of leads into sort of the final thing I want to ask you is a little bit more
Yeah,
about. Uh, well, did you get an MDiv? Was that
I
your
did.
yeah?
Hmm.
So I mean, already you have a
Yeah.
pastoral understanding that
Hmm.
a pure scholar wouldn't have, right? You already have that
Yeah.
exposure.
Hmm.
Um, does uh what will you do with this?
Mm,
what are you thinking about? And pastoral meaning the broad sense. What?
yeah. Yeah. So, my pastoral, I've always had to have a very broad definition of
Yeah.
pastor, because I'm a woman,
Uh-huh.
growing up in a Southern Baptist church, and so pastoral ministry for me, means a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Um, but you're right. I can't escape it. I have, despite like I, I've run away from it so much in my life. Like, I am not a
Uh-huh.
pastor. I am a scholar. I am not a pastor. I am
Uh-huh.
a writer, and gosh, I just cannot get away from it.
Well, you have a giant
And
heart and that shows it, right? So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I think so. And I think, my husband is an atheist, and so
Hmm.
um there will be times that I have like these moments that are crises of faith, and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, maybe it's just all made up or whatever, and he'll go, you don't believe that. So even he is able, as my atheist husband is able to see, like, as much as I do want to run away from it, I can't.
Yeah.
Um but I think that whatever I do, it will have a pastoral flavor,
Yeah.
because I love people. Um, but I really, really love writing the
Hmm.
most.
Hmm.
Um, and so my goal has always been to write and teach and to get paid to do that.
Uh-huh.
And I don't care really um, what the format looks like.
Uh-huh.
I've always thought that it would be professor, um, but with the latest updates to academia,
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe it's not.
Yeah.
And so actually, social media has been a huge
Uh-huh.
space for me to do that, um, where, like, this is deeply personal, but I know two people who are getting baptized on Easter
Uh-huh.
because of my content.
Oh. Huh.
And like, I
Yeah.
just wept.
And that feel,
Like,
yeah. That's so
like I
wonderful.
could weep.
Yeah.
I could weep right now.
Yeah.
Just these queer people who had never stepped foot in a church before
Yeah.
watching one of my sassy, silly little videos.
Yeah.
Um, and now they're getting baptized. And so those moments, for me, I'm
Hmm.
like, whatever I have to do
Yeah.
to make someone who has historically felt like they don't belong in the church
Right.
to realize that they do, and they can be fully themselves in the church, like, that's everything to me.
That's what makes
um
it worth it, right?
it is. and
Yeah.
and just to be a small part of that
Hmm.
is just fantastic and such an honor. And so I don't know what that looks like. I
Uh-huh.
never have. I'm just sort of like following, the whims of, I guess I'm following God, to be
Uh-huh. Yeah.
hyper spiritual about it. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I want to write, I want to teach.
Uh-huh.
If that's on YouTube, great.
Yeah.
If that's at a respected Ivy League
Right.
institution, great. If it's in a church, great. Like,
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
I want to do.
Yeah. What a
Um,
gift. I mean, my,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, but yeah, I don't think I'm ever gonna beat the pastoral allegations.
Well, I think just helping people, we're going through massive, we just talked about that. In the last
Mhm.
50 years, women have a lot more agency.
Yeah.
I interviewed Carmela Williams, who is a very sassy person, talks about
Hmm.
this. She goes, as a black person, she goes, I'm rejoicing right now because y'all see what
Mm.
I've been seeing, and what my
Yeah.
ancestors have seen
Yeah.
their whole lives. And
Oof. Hmm.
yeah, and she's from Mississippi, so she knows that.
Hmm.
Um, and this idea of providing that transition, um, ability to transition from those old models to a new model.
Yeah.
It's a privilege.
It is a privilege, and I feel a little bit, you know, the conservative church has always picked its like pet problem,
Yeah.
and it always moves on
Yeah.
to a
It'll
new
find
one.
another.
It will,
They
and
never cared about
um,
abortion before 1978.
exactly, that's exactly right.
You know?
Um, and so I think that I am a lot of us are the like people who are in this progressive Christian space. We're on the front lines
Yeah.
of this battle right now,
Hmm.
which feels really scary and hard.
Hmm.
But then, like, I really do have faith, despite everything going on right now. I really do have faith that in 40, 50, 60 years, when we turn around and look back, we're going to realize, like,
That this was where the work
okay,
was being done. I do
yes.
believe that. Yeah. I
And
really do. Yeah.
a lot of this that I do, I have a 5-year-old daughter. Um, a lot of it is so that she can look back and say, well, my mom did something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and that helps me wake up in the morning, is the
Yeah.
idea of, well, look, I have the receipts. My mom showed up and did
Right.
this.
Yes.
And my grandkids will be able to say the same.
Uh-huh.
My mom never wore a red hat. She she fought hard,
Yeah.
and
And
that's
that
what
will
keeps me
continue
going.
for a while. I think a lot of people think, "Oh, I'm so exhausted. It's going to be." No,
Yeah.
this is the work of a lifetime. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And it's a work that is really difficult, but really important, like all good
Uh-huh.
things. And I get the I don't know, maybe you've caught me like on an especially hopeful day. But like,
Yeah.
you know, if Bonhoeffer were here today, he'd be able to look back on World War II, and
Uh-huh.
it would be finished. And so I really hope that in our lifetime we get that moment of like looking back on this moment in
Yeah.
time and be like, we have other battles to fight now because we surely
Yeah.
will, but we got out of that.
Right.
Um, and that's my hope and prayer for all of us.
Well, and one of the things I've learned to do is to embrace the time, the period in which I'm living. So I'm old enough
Yeah.
to remember the 70s, and that
Right.
was that was when I formed spiritually, was in that period.
Yeah.
And it was also a very fraught time. But then and then to come here, I go, oh, that's what was happening then is what we're living today.
Mm,
And
mm,
I'm thinking that maybe that's the same way
yeah.
people, maybe more your age and, younger people will go,
Hmm.
oh, I lived in this time that was just
Yep.
so crazy, but that's where it all happened. And
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I hope
yeah,
so too.
so cool. So,
Hmm.
well, thank you so much. I just loved our conversation, being able to do a little bit of nerdy stuff, a little bit of big
Yeah.
picture stuff, talk about plans and everything.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I got to nerd out on your podcast way more than I usually get to. So thank you for letting me do that. So fun.
Well, I love to do it. In fact, that's why I love this format so much. And
Yeah. It's
yeah,
great.
I've really been able to do. I had Lynn Huber on about a
Oh
month
yeah.
ago. She's fantastic.
Lovely.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
great.
Yeah, I'll get to meet her in person this summer. So
Oh,
yeah,
amazing.
wonderful.
That's great.
Anyway, well, best wishes for your studies, for your family, doing studies and family and social media and writing all at the same time. And
Yes.
and we'll welcome you back when you come back to the United States. So
Thank you. I'll be ready.
all right. All right. Take
Thanks so
care.
much.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.